presentation, our amazing workshop that we have prepared for you. So I would like to invite on our stage our amazing speaker, Maya, and also for you to know, Maya, actually, she's joining our program from the beginning. So, she's our amazing facilitator, and we also know that she really, really enjoy running the sessions for you, dear. So, Maya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm guessing you can, so
Yes.
that's good news. That's first good news for today. I hope you guys have your coffee ready. I do not intend to make a snooze fest out of it, but it's 4 p.m. at least where I'm sitting, and that's Belgrade office of EY. So, and we'll probably take around hour or so for this transactions real estate workshop. So thank you for joining, and I really hope I'll make it interesting for you. Let's see how this works. Okay. So a bit about me. My name is Maja Šarh-Bazmarojević. I'm an EY partner in charge of strategy and transactions. And the reason why I'm here is actually a bit different. I am Central and Southeast Europe real estate, hospitality, and construction sector leader for S&T. And also, I'm culture and motivation leader, which means I at least try, to give voice to underrepresented groups in EY. A bit more formal part about me. So I graduated from Belgrade University. I did my MBA. I'm a member of Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. So that's, again, real estate related. I've spent, well, almost 19 years now of my professional life in real estate, doing all kinds of projects. In EY, I'm mostly focused on corporate finance. So I do a lot of project financing, feasibility studies. I also do concessions, public-private partnerships, and some M&A. And my industry focus, again, is real estate and also healthcare. And besides that, I'm also a mother to a 7-month-old boy. So if I'm a bit sleepy and mentioning coffee, that's because of him. One of my favorite quotes is, buy land, they're not making it anymore. And land is a limited resource. Thus, real estate happens to be favorite investment to people when they want to diversify their investments. I work with a lot of individuals on M&A projects, for example, and people sell their companies and then they buy apartments or blocks of apartments in some cases because they believe real estate is the best investment. Real estate is a cyclical industry, meaning it has its ups and downs. So whether it's the best investment, there are some caveats to it, or as consultants like to say, it depends. But it's still one of my favorite quotes. A bit about the practice where I work within EY. I believe you already went through EY introduction, so I'm going to skip that part. But the part where I'm happy to work with counts for almost 19,000 professionals now. And most of them, actually, people who work in real estate, sit in assurance because we audit some of the largest real estate companies globally in the world. Also, some of the largest funds. We did IPOs for real estate companies. It's a very interesting job we do. We also do a lot of tax advisory for them, consulting, and then S&T, the department where I sit in, is actually the smallest one, thus accounting for the smallest percentage of work being done. We're globally integrated, and it's not just a phrase, which I'm happy to underline, because, for example, right now, we're working on a project in Middle East where there are 10 different countries involved. So we really work together, and we work great. So that's an interesting experience for me. I'm 43, by the way, so I've spent a lot of time in EY. This is the slide which is my favorite, and although it looks quite rudimentary, and I'm sorry for my PPT skills, but give me some credit. I'm ancient. as I mentioned, real estate is a cyclical industry, and the services we provide can be in any part of that cycle. I try to divide these services between the stages of the cycle. Majority of them can be divided like that, but as you will see later, not all of them, and we will discuss that as well. So if we look at this, is pretty, making it pretty rudimentary, but I think it helps. At least it helped me understand in the beginning. So planning. So when you're just thinking about doing something, investing or development, this is a more advanced stage. So there is money involved. It becomes more serious. Management. So you have something and you need to figure out, what to do with it, or whether to do anything with it. And disposal, which can be, fire sale in times of crisis. So you need to get liquidity fast, or it's just a management decision where you want to direct your attention elsewhere. I want to apologize in advance if you can hear some noises. We're redecorating part of our offices, so it's actual construction around me. So if it gets a bit loud, I'll move elsewhere, but hopefully we'll be fine. So moving to the planning stage, like I said, it's the early inception part, and that's where we're happiest when we get involved, because then we can work with the client, we can work with the idea, not with the actual brick and mortar. So something is not set in stone yet. And the first part we can do is location advisory. And for me, it's very interesting because usually we work with large multinationals who are trying to figure out, in most of cases, not all of them, where to open their next big factory, for example. And I worked on several of those projects in my career. The first step is usually sitting with the client and discussing all the nitty gritties. And when I opened that Excel first, I was honestly shocked how many fine details there are. For example, so the company, a large multinational, wants to do a factory in one of the countries, and usually it's a global assignment because they can do it anywhere in the world. And you ask them questions like, do you need a railroad? Do you need a port? How far should it be? What is the educational profile of the local population that is required for you? Language skills, engineering skills. I mean, anything you can think of, it's there in that questionnaire, and it helps us narrow down the selection. Because again, if whole world is your playground, then you need to think about stuff like that. Some of the countries have, for example, programs where they support foreign investment, so we ask questions around that as well. It's not necessarily, to be honest, the most deciding factor, but it can influence a lot. And then we start looking for them. So that's a very interesting service, at least for me. Business plan development is something that lies, let's say, closer to the corporate finance part. So we help them understand whether the thing they visualized and they imagined can perform in actual, let's say, in reality, considering the part of the real estate cycle we're in, the demand and supply forces, financing availability, capital structure. So whether they're financing all through their own equity, which, as we know, is probably the most expensive option, or they have different types of other financing available. And then based on the results of that business plan development, we can help them decide whether there's some fine tuning involved or the project works great. And usually this part of our job also requires talking to the banks, because the reason they're preparing this business plan is either for their internal decision making, so to decide whether it makes sense for them to move on, and it can also be used for banks, because banks in their procedures want to understand how the project will perform before they sign on to anything. Highest and best use is also very interesting. It's actually one of the examples I'm going to elaborate further today, because I had a very interesting project with a client a couple of years back. This is where we help client, for example, they obtain usage of a piece of land and they want to get the most out of it. And we help them understand what is, because highest and best use operates under three assumptions. First one is that it's legally possible. So whether it's current zoning of the land, so whether it's something that is already the land is assigned for that usage, or it can be changed into that usage. It's physically possible, so you're not building Burj Khalifa in a swamp, and it's economically feasible, which is the part where they usually like to hear our views, meaning the project is profitable, or it makes sense, or it will yield some other benefits. So that's highest and best use for you in a nutshell. Strategy development is also interesting because we get to discuss a lot, and I think this is one of the services where we add the most value. So we help our clients build or determine their strategy, again, depending on the real estate cycle part where we are in, the market they want to enter or markets, everything else I've already mentioned. Market analysis is, let's say, a smaller chunk of other services I've mentioned. It's usually required by the clients who are either wanting to move into another market segment. So, for example, they want to try retail or they want to try building offices and they've never done it before. Or, as a recent case, maybe we were talking to a large client who only did residential and they wanted to do industrial now. So they wanted to understand who are the major players. Is it worth their while to try to be a player in that segment, etc. So it's very informative, and it's a service where we tend to discuss a lot with the client because you need to be able to answer their questions, and as we like to say, what keeps them up at night. And sometimes it's not what they initially ask for. So what we like to do is sit with them and ask them, try and dig what is the actual problem, what is the thing they wish to achieve. Concept advisory is, we had a project, for example, a couple of years ago in Bosnia, where we were helping client who had an existing building, which became obsolete. So that, let's say, the current usage was no longer highest and best use. And we were helping them determine what would be the next concept they should develop. So we have a building, we have, let's say, a finished product, and we were trying to figure out what can be an alternative usage. And they actually listened to us, and I'm happy to see every year, the changes that occur. The next part is let's say a bit more creative, or a bit less creative, sorry. And this is part where we get towards investing and development. We usually work with investors here, whether capital or banks or other types of investors, and we help them understand the financial performance of the future or the existing project. So the first part is financial modeling, feasibility studies and valuations, and this is something we do, let's say, 70% of our time. So we develop financial models to help our clients understand what is going to be the financial performance of their project and whether it's worth their while. So whether it's worth the investment. And we did a lot of hospitality projects in that segment, a lot of offices, some retail, and some industrial is the most frequent. Obviously, the more usages we're considering, the model becomes more complex. I'm going to show you a bit later a financial model we did for a hotel for the client that I'm going to talk about today. This first step actually is used in all the other steps under this bucket. So for equity raising, we approach equity investors, we talk to them, we usually present study or the segments of the study, and we discuss whether the financial performance of the project matches their desired or required IRR, so internal rate of return, or the desired outcome. Debt raising is working for, I'm talking from the perspective of markets where I'm present in. Usually it implies working with the banks, where we discuss, first of all, whether the project matches their requirements. More frequently than not nowadays, banks like to see projects with an ESG element. So projects we have that have a bit of green implemented as well. And some of the tenants, for example, for offices and retail also like to see that. And again, we present the business plan, we present the feasibility study, whether it's existing or a planned project, and we negotiate with the banks on the client's behalf to get the best possible outcome for them. And part where we work with our colleagues from tax and legal departments. So we help our clients obtain the best tax structure or legal structure for their project, or we optimize existing structures. And in general, we work a lot with other service lines when possible on our projects, because first of all, we never, ever meddle into something we don't understand. So if it's tax, we involve our colleagues from tax. If it's legal, we have a whole law office dealing with it. And if it's consulting, again, the same case. So we work very closely with our colleagues from other service lines. Moving on to management. So this is, again, a later stage of real estate cycle. Sometimes our clients want to redevelop something. So this is similar to what I was saying about client who has an existing building and wants to consider if there was an option for them to, for example, demolish it completely, it would be a redevelopment. But they had no such option. Asset management strategy is also where we support our clients into determining their asset performance, whether they need to keep or everything, or they can dispose of something. What is their assets required for the core business, whether they have some investment properties, how well these investment properties are performing, whether they're located in the markets which are a good match for that type of property, and stuff like that. So these are usually very big projects where we support our clients. Clients are usually companies whose real estate is not usually their primary industry, and we help them understand their portfolios, how they're performing, and what is the next step. It also goes hand in hand with portfolio optimization. And renovation and concept redevelopment, again, you have an existing property, you're not sure what to do with those, or it's just no longer the highest and best use for that type of property. So we help them develop a new concept and again start yielding better outcomes. Disposal is the final stage. Depending on whether we're working for a buyer or we're working for the seller, the services may differ. We usually work with our M&A practice in this case. So we prepare a teaser or investment memorandum. Teaser is a shorter document. It's usually used to assert an interest. And then once potential buyer confirms their interest, then we move forward with signing a non-disclosure agreement. And with IM or investment memorandum is usually a more detailed document, which can or may provide some more detailed information or some confidential information. So it's usually provided once there is confirmed interest or even non-binding offer on the table. Sell-side advisory and buy-side advisory, some of my colleagues probably touched upon that, so I won't go into too many details. And target search is not so different from location advisory in a way, but in this case, we're looking for properties that, or even portfolio companies that they would like to acquire. I think we will have separate time for Q&A, but if you have a question which is pertaining to a certain slide, feel free to ask, and I will strive to answer them all at the end of the presentation. So now we are moving on to, let's say, exact examples. Because of confidentiality, I won't be able to say who is the client or the exact location of the project. But this is the project that is very interesting because it had 3 phases, and phases were pertaining to very different real estate, transaction real estate types of services. So it comes in very handy to explain on an example what type of services we provide. So moving on to phase 1 and concept advisory. So we had a client, or actually we're still working with them. They gained usage of 117 hectares of land, and they weren't sure. It's a large piece of land, let's put it that way. And they were contemplating what to do with it. And they're actually not in real estate business. And they had no previous experience with Belgrade nor with Serbia. And they approached us, and they had some real estate people on team, so that was, let's say, a bit easier. So what were our tasks? First of all, conduct market research of Belgrade real estate market. Belgrade real estate market is a wide term, but actually they wanted to understand all the segments of the real estate market. So we're talking commercial, industrial, office, residential, retail, everything there was that exists or that existed on the Belgrade real estate market at the time. Provide them with an overview of the current state. So what are the current forces of demand and supply and future development, so that they can understand, what are the projects in the pipeline and whether some of them may cannibalize their project. Devise a program for development of the land plots, because it is one big piece of land, but usually they consist of smaller land plots. And also a phasing recommendation for the redevelopment, because if you have such a big piece of land, usually it's advised that you do not start everything everywhere all at once, but to quote the movie, but to have some phases to it and have some wisdom to it. What are you going to start with and why, and how it's going to develop? For example, and this is way back when I was 24, we were developing, I was working for another company where we're doing a large location development project. And actually what I learned at that time is when you're developing a large project in an area which is people are not used to going to, so whether it was an industrial zone before or whatever may happen, then first what you need to do is put an area of interest for the people, so that they can get used to going there. And in this case, the idea was to put some restaurants over there so that people can get used to going there. And then we were supposed to develop other phases of the project. So that's what struck me as interesting at the time. Going back to our project. So this is an actual page from our proposal discussing the project process and structure. This is a very helpful tool for us so that clients can understand, how we approach the project and what they can expect in each phase of the project. So in this case, the first part was market research. So understanding, as I mentioned, they've never had any projects in Belgrade and in Serbia previously. So we were going to help them understand the economical and political overview of Belgrade and Serbia. Supply demand projects in the pipeline, so everything for the selected real estate segments. In this case, it was almost everything, so hospitality, office, retail, and convention center. And we also gave them some commentary and our views about the real estate segments in the light of location, potential strengths and weaknesses, because a piece of land may be perfect for a certain development, but it may make no sense because of distance from the city or availability of transport, or they may simply be too many existing projects which may impede the success of this project. So these are all the comments that we provide to our clients. So it's not just, here's a report and draw your own conclusions. A bit of it is, because they need to make their own decisions in the end. But we also help them out, so we give them some views as real estate professionals. The second part is program and phasing preparation. So help them understand what they can construct in the light of current land zoning and master plan, uh, what they can build if they can change the zoning. And we also prepare for them the development phasing, which, like I mentioned, if you have a big piece of land, you can't really do everything at the same time. You need to determine what is going to be your best shot at the beginning. And finalization. So we like to keep things interactive when we work with clients. So not just, we take the brief and we disappear for 3 months and then we come back and here's the report. That's usually not the best way. So as you can see, it's marked with the stars. We have strategic workshops to discuss where we're at, what's our way of thinking. Sometimes projects may change during the project, so this all helps us, gain an understanding with the client and also help them understand what it is that we're doing and where we're heading. So, and that's when we finalize the document. There is additional line that underlines what I've just said. So constant communication with the client. For very large projects, sometimes we have touch points each week. In other cases, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. It also depends on the client's personality. Some people like to run a very tight ship, so they like to be in contact with us more frequently. Others prefer not to be disturbed and they like, for example, an email every once in a while. So it depends and we need to adjust. So this is going into a bit of more details of each of the segment, again, taken from our proposal, where we provide some additional information. So basically, again, political, economical overview of the country and the city, development of project concepts, putting that into context of each of the market segments' performance. In this case, we had issued some previous reports, so also addressing the changes. And also, we did this together with the legal team. So analyzing legally allowed possibilities given the existing framework and location conditions. And that's how we were identifying success factors of the development concept. So something may seem as a great idea at the time, but then, things happen and you need to be able to help client understand what are the options for them and what they can do and where they can go further. This is a page from an actual report of ours. It addresses hotel market overview and considerations. I had to exclude the text because confidentiality, so you will just see some illustrations. But basically, what we were discussing is demand. So number of arrivals in Belgrade, number of overnights, which is important for hospitality. You need to understand how many guests are coming, how long they're staying. These were the largest upcoming hotel projects at the time. All of these projects were opened in the meantime, except for one. We also comment on the hotel supply. So if, for example, you want to build a 4-star hotel, which you can see in Belgrade exists in abundance, you need to understand also what is going to be the distinguishing factor for your hotel, whether there is already an oversupply, what is your location, so whether there are too many hotels around it, does it make sense to have too many hotels around it, is there a convention center nearby, so stuff like that. And then we gave them some considerations. So increasing number of overnights, limited supply, no hotel supply at project location, which is also easily accessible from the airport. Limited stay due to remote location from the city, because if you're a tourist, you want to be nearby the main attractions. You probably won't take a ride, for 45 minutes every day. And we made the conclusion that it would still be a primary choice for their land development, or at least for the first phase. We did the same for offices. So we provided them with the office stock. What is the prime office vacancy rate? So when you build something, how much of it is empty? What are the rental levels? This is also important input for financial modeling. For example, if you're doing a financial model for an office building, one of the inputs is how much you can charge if you're leasing it out. These were some projects in the pipeline. Again, all of them exist right now, which is kind of nice. And we gave them some consideration. So Belgrade still has an increasing office stock, declining vacancy rates, which is amazingly enough still true in 2024. Stable office net rental levels, good accessibility through highway, which is important if you have, for example, a large number of employees coming. And we recommended them to consider doing an office park and not singular buildings due to layout and areas. Again, same stuff for retail. Unfortunately, cannot present the text, and I also think it would be kind of boring. But in this case, we were considering retail space in Belgrade per 1,000 inhabitants. This is the metric for retail. How many modern shopping centers there are? What are the rents in the high street and in shopping centers? Which are the existing and pipeline shopping centers? We deleted the project location, sorry for that, but it would be kind of telltale, but that was also being considered. So if you look at your location, how many shopping malls are nearby, what is their size, what are their tenants? So these are all the things that we were considering. And actually we told them not to do retail at that stage because some of it was already developed, and I think we ended up recommending them to do a retail park. Same for industrial. So we gave them industrial stock in Belgrade, who is doing what, so who are the major developers, what are the recent and pipeline developments, and some considerations. So we were recommending them to implement logistics, but to a lesser extent, and to be actually some kind of contributing content for the other factors. This was step 2, so program and phasing preparation. So what they can build according to current zoning, what they can build according to what is our wishful thinking or what should be allowed, and also the phasing. So in accordance with the current zoning that we explored together with our legal team, basically there wasn't a lot that they could do. But in case of scenario 2, where there would be a new concept devised, we recommended them to do a hotel, Class A office park with buildings of 6 to 10,000 meters, retail park, and then in the end, potentially logistics park. And we also told them, having in mind that we already have well-positioned convention centers, that it's not something that they should do because it holds very limited potential. So I mean, I know it hurts clients sometimes to say no or to tell them that their idea is not the best possible one, but if we're being paid, we do not do that to nod our heads, but to give them skeptical and concrete advice so that they can. We need to preserve our integrity. So in this case, we said no to convention centers. This was the indicative time frame that we provided from the development of conceptual solution. This is the actual page from report from the amount of text, I can say. Some location. So this is actually legal part where we say what are the legal limitations prescribed by the law, how soon they should have some documents provided by the authorities so that they can plan their project timeline. And this is timeline and prioritization, of development components. So we provided some time for construction permits and feasibility studies, and then also securing contract with the hotel operator. And then you see all these yellow lines. First part is construction and operation of the hotel. Then in phase 2, we had 3 phases for offices. For retail park, it was developed at the same time as the first phase for offices. And then for warehousing, as you can see, it commences a bit later because it requires the existence of all the other components for it to be useful. And final step, finalization. As I mentioned, we had a lot of workshops with the client at the time just to discuss, what is the approach? These are the results. Do you want to change something? Do you want to change the approach? Do you want to add another segment? Are you okay? We're going to exclude this segment from further research because of the reasons we listed and stuff like that. So to avoid any unnecessary surprises once the report is submitted. So this was phase one of the project, and the client came back after a certain time. They got the land, and they needed to understand the value of the land, and under a special assumption that the zoning would be changed, and also under the assumption the zoning would not be changed. So what were our tasks? First of all, again, market research of Belgrade real estate market to create the assumptions for the valuation and to understand how the market is performing at that time. Determine the appropriate valuation methodology. I'm going to touch upon a bit later, but basically there are three valuation methodologies in real estate, and perform valuation in accordance with the international valuation standards. So valuations are regulated by standards, and in order to be admissible, for example, for bank financing or for financial reporting, different types of usages, most of them dictate the application of standards. These are some details around if you're applying the standards. There are certain content of the report that need to be present. I'm not going to go through the whole list. What I'm going to say is all of these, every single part of this content is important. Because in that case, you know who the valuer is, who the clients are, what was the intended usage. Because as I mentioned, the usage of the report dictates sometimes the methodology, and not all methodologies are to be applied for all types of usages. So in this case, when, for example, the bank is reading the report, they can rest assured that the report was done for that particular usage and that the methodology that was applied is applicable and appropriate. Valuation date. So if you get a 5-year-old report, it may be good for something, but it may be bad for something else. You can make your own decision. What are the information that you relied upon? What type of information? Who provided it? What are the assumptions that you used? Valuation approach. What is the result of the valuation? So what is the amount? In case there are any material uncertainties, so in times of global financial crisis, and I'm talking about 2009, there was a commentary around that particular event and how it may influence the valuation, because if, the whole financial market ceases to exist, your value can tend to, be zero. So that's the material uncertainty. In the times of COVID, we also had commentary around material uncertainty, so that these are the comments that are usually created by the IVS and applied by the valuers. And any other statements that are of importance for the reader of the valuation report. Basically, the idea of all of these disclosures is that whoever gets to read the report, and there may be some limitations to that as well, gets all the information required to understand all the principles of valuation, why it was done, when it was done, and how it was done, so that they can make conclusion whether it's applicable or useful to them or not. I'm not sure whether you already had valuation webinars. I'm going to keep this short, not to repeat myself or my colleagues. But basically, in case of real estate, there are three approaches: market approach, income approach, and cost approach. Market approach is what we call a comparison approach. So usually you use evidence from the market. So it's usually either complete transactions or ads, asking prices, and then you do certain adjustments because no two properties are exactly the same or are rarely exactly the same. So you need to make some adjustments in order to make it as similar as possible. Income approach, which is basically discounted cash flow approach. So you understand what is the cash, or what is what the property is going to be generating, and then you capitalize it and then you discount it. And cost approach, which is used for some types of very specific properties, usually industrial, and we call it replacement cost approach, because what you're doing is not actually market evidence or cash flows. You're saying, okay, prudent investor would pay no more than its replacement or reproduction costs for a certain asset. So you're saying this is how much it would cost to build a new one, and then you discount it or you depreciate it based on certain aspects. So this is valuation methodology in a nutshell. And this is from the valuation report itself. So these are all the disclosures we are making. Again, because it's a page from actual report, we cannot show you what is the exact location, but we're providing detailed descriptions of the property, neighborhood, whether we visited it actually or not, what is the purpose of the appraisal, and what are, in this case, who are the owners, and the areas of the subject properties. Again, all of these disclosures are required by the international valuation standards, but we're saying who is the owner, if there are any special assumptions. So in this case, we said, as per client's request, we have performed valuation for illustrative purposes only under a special assumption that the subject property is zoned for commercial usage. So this is also very important to stress if you're doing a special assumption, because it means it deviates from the reality. The currency, for all the obvious reasons. And then also the definition of the market value, which is something all valuers know by heart and can repeat in the middle of the night, but basically what is the premise of value. And then disclosures continue. I wanted just to show you practically all the things we need to mention in the valuation report. Again, because you never know who is going to end up reading it, or but you cannot be certain, and you need to make sure that the person or the entity understands the intention of the value, when it was done and how it was done and for which purposes, so whether it's really applicable for them or not. And this was the valuation conclusion. So this was the regular one. So this is under current zoning. So it's construction land, the area, and the market value is 7.8 million euro. And you can see under special assumptions. So if it can be converted into commercial land, commercial meaning commercial usages, that the value more than triples. So it's also important for the client to understand, because changing the zoning is time consuming. So if you're doing it, it has to be worth your while. And in this case, it was more than worth their while. And then we also need to discuss as valuers, or disclose, sorry, how we selected the relevant valuation report and what was our rationale behind it. So valuation reports are actually a lot of explaining to do. And we explain why we chose the market report approach, because it's land, so it would be the most applicable and appropriate methodology, that we had sufficient evidence, sufficient samples to use. And then we discussed also the development potential of the land, etc., etc. So more disclosures and the value itself. And this is actually the evidence we need to provide under the regulations. So these are all the comparables we used. As you can see, there is 10 of them. The adjustments we made. So conditions of sale in this case, if it's an ad, so asking price. In each case, the deduction made was 10%, because that's usually how much the asking price deviates from the achieved one. And then we made adjustments for location, access, zoning, topography. It can also be important, whether the land is flat or it's not really flat, the size, and then we provided total adjustments, also weight assigned to comparable because some comparables are more comparable, and the final value conclusion. So this is again a page from an actual report. These were also recent transactions because there are databases available which present actual transactions that took place. In this case, adjustment for conditions of sales is 0 because these are achieved prices. Then again, some adjustments made and the price we reached. The list of parcels as well. So all the disclosures we're making, this is under the special assumptions. So this is same methodology, different usage. Again, the list of comparables. And that's basically concluding phase 2, which was valuation of the land. Phase 3, client came back. They said, okay, we considered your report. We would like to develop a hotel. We have an offer from a large hotel chain, and we want to develop a financial model to understand whether the project is feasible under these conditions or not. And again, a page from actual proposal. So we were discussing, first of all, modeling inputs, because the way we develop financial models is we have separate pages for inputs, calculations, and outputs. And this was actually part for the input page, so understanding, first of all, the revenue side. So number of rooms, quality of rooms, quality of amenities, number of amenities, construction cost, forecasts for occupancy rates, the room rates, and other assumptions. We were developing this model for 30 years of the project. The output would be actually all the inputs for the input page, then the actual model development. So developing the model on the agreed specification. In this case, the agreed specification was that the client wanted to be able to use the model themselves afterwards. So we actually did the training for them once the model was done to help them understand how to use it. We also test our models for consistency, mathematical, logical. We also test the inputs. And then we also get results for NPV, so net present value, and internal rate of return projections. We help the client also derive the financial statements for the hotel, or estimated financial statements to be more exact. We discussed with them and gained feedback on the model. We did some adjustments on the assumptions because in the meantime, the hotel chain changed their specifications. And we did the model handover and knowledge transfer where we formally hand over the model to the client and they get usage of it. And we also provided them with the ongoing support because in some cases they needed further support as the investment progressed, and we provided them with the updated versions of the model. These are more details around the model architecture I was talking about. So on the input side, we needed to understand the occupancy, the room rate forecast, as I mentioned, construction costs, operating expenses once the hotel becomes operational, 30 years of projections and understanding the returns, NPV and IRR. Calculations are actually the only part of the model where we enter formulas. It helps with model hygiene so that you know where to look for something and how to look for something. And we also talked with our tax colleagues to understand the tax implications, and also our colleagues from assurance for the accounting implications. And finally, outputs, where we also did some sensitivity and risk analysis, meaning we choose certain inputs which have the highest impact on the financial results, and then we test them, and we test how changing these inputs influences the hotel financial performance. This is just a more simplified visual of the previous page. So this is actually how our sheets are created. So inputs page, calculations page, and outputs page. These are some further details, snapshots from the actual models, and in general how we do models in EY. And with that being said, we actually reached the end of this webinar, and I would like to thank you for your time, because as you get older, you will see that you can get more money, but you can not get more time. So I really appreciate you setting aside an hour of your precious time to spend it with me here today. And I thank you for that. And I hope this was interesting for you. And we can, if you have some questions, we can talk about it. I see some questions. How important it is to know the legal basis for a specific country when working on the projects. It's important to have at least basic understanding, because then you know what you can do and you cannot do. But in EY, we have a whole legal team that we work with. So to work in real estate, I think the best possible thing you can have is gained with experience, because real estate is a cyclical industry, so you gain understanding of the cycles as you move through them. I think that, again, the best way to learn is through experience. I had colleagues in my team starting with zero experience in real estate, but if you have a good team and a careful training program, I think it can be done. So yeah, you can work in real estate as a business graduate. I think it also answers the question, what do you need to secure a job in this field? Depending on the country, I cannot really comment on all the countries, because some of them have specific real estate education. In Serbia, it's not available except for valuers. You need to, real estate gets into your blood. I mean, I cannot go into a shopping center anymore like a normal human being. I usually look at, where they put their anchor tenants, how they distributed their tenants, what do they have, what type of shopping mall it is. Did they make any changes to the tenants? Are they changing them frequently, meaning they're not really looking into performance, and some of these businesses are relatively new and startups, and they some of them vanish and they need to replace them quickly. So again, I started when I didn't even do my master's degree, so I didn't even know corporate finance at the time. I wasn't acquainted with it, but I was very curious, and I have architects in my family, so I guess it a bit runs in our blood as well. But you need to be understanding finance is a plus, especially in this particular field. So real estate, corporate finance. But also genuine interest for real estate helps, and genuine interest in architecture helps. How do you understand or calculate when the project will pay off and generate income? Through financial models. So basically, we develop a model, and then you can actually see the break-even point when the project becomes profitable, and it's one of the information we supply for the investors and the banks so that they can understand. What is the best fitting masters to pursue to continue working in real estate? Depending on the segment, for valuers, RICS or NAV, which is European Valuers certification, helps, or is required under regulations, to be more exact. In corporate finance, real estate, corporate finance is a must, and then real estate is something you build upon. But again, for valuers, it's RICS or NAV, depending on the country. Some of them have their own certificates, so I cannot speak for the whole of Europe and Middle East. But again, sorry for the consulting answer, but it depends. My favorite project yet. It's a tough one. Currently, I mean, historically, over 19 years, the favorite project was the one that I did in my hometown. I was born in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, and we did the project there. So that was my way of, giving back a bit to my hometown. And the other favorite is something we're doing right now is real estate and healthcare. We're doing a financing for a hospital. So it's very interesting for me, and it marries two of my greatest interests. So, how significant is the political climate of a particular country when considering the potential purchase of land? If you're a foreign investor, it's very important because investors require usually three top things for them is stability, predictability, and also certainty. So if the political climate is shaky, it can be very difficult for foreign investors to come and to convince their shareholders and their C-suite to come into a certain country. So it can be tricky. But then others come. There are IFIs who are specialized for such things. So there are different risk appetites and profiles for each type of investor. I remember, for example, in Serbia in 2003, we were just out of transition, a small country, emerging market, anything you can think of, and there were investors coming. Serbia matched their risk appetite and their risk profile. So, and that was after a huge political turmoil. So, again, depends on their risk appetite. They required much higher returns to justify the investment, but what I'm trying to say is it can be done. What are the biggest challenges in accurately forecasting market demand for real estate in fast developing regions, and how do you pivot the strategy accordingly? With regular updates. Real estate, I mean, yes, these are fast moving markets, but it takes some time to develop, for example, an office building. So we're talking, even at the fastest permitting process, we're talking about 2 to 3 years. So if you're developing something and you've already entered you committed funds, you're already started building, it is very difficult to pivot. Forecasting is a bit easier because you get to change the report, but if you start building, it's a bit more difficult to make the changes, and that's why we take these things very seriously, and market research is done in great detail. Does EY still focus on academic achievements, or is business experience and achievements also considered? To be honest, when looking into, I think this is a better question for talent team. I can only speak from my own hiring experience. It won't matter as much to me if you had the highest possible average grade. To me, what will be important is your communication skills, your willingness to learn, your curiosity. I'm talking if you're a brand new hire, your curiosity, and again, depending on the level that we're looking for. If you're looking for a more senior position, your experience will be looked into as well, but not always and not necessarily. I mean, I was a straight A student, but in the real world, it's not always the most important thing. I think what saved me, so to speak, was I was getting a job when Serbia was just finished transitioning, and to me, what helped was that I spoke good English and I lived abroad before, so I understood the way international business is conducted, and I had zero experience. So, it depends on the state of the market you're in. I benefited significantly from the the economic uncertainty at the time and the fact that there were no specialists in the market at the time. Yeah, I answered this one. Sorry. How did you start your career and how you recommend us to start a career in real estate? My pathway was not a typical one, and I'm going to keep it short for the sake of your time. But I graduated, my major was Japanese language and literature. I lived in Japan for a while. I came back to Serbia and I started looking for a job. And first, I found a job in high school teaching Japanese. And I realized it's not something I wanted to do in the long run. And then I learned of an international real estate company opening their offices in Belgrade. And I supplied my CV and I got a job as an assistant. So very entry level position, but I was keen to learn and keen to understand. And I stayed there for 12 years. And then my next job was EY. So it was not a typical pathway to corporate finance nor to real estate, but if I can help you with something is I didn't always know what I want, but I knew for sure what I don't want. And I think either helps when you're making a decision. At least it did for me. You know, I know you could probably you're at the age where you could probably all be my sons and daughters. So, you know, I'm ancient. Uh, would you recommend pursuing a master on real estate? Potentially, yes. I think now when it's available, yes, and I'm biased. So, you know, try asking the same question to my colleagues in other competencies, whether they will say they will recommend. I would highly recommend, but again, I'm in love with this job for almost 20 years. So, um, how can I improve the valuation part of the projects to have better results? If you mean how you can get better financial results, sometimes you can play with the capital structure. So sometimes obtaining better financing conditions can yield better results. Sometimes you can do something a bit cheaper. I remember a meeting I had in London way back when, and it was a very famous late architect who I admire a lot. And we told her that we asked her actually if her project could be a bit cheaper. I think we nearly gave her a heart attack, so that was fun. But yeah, that did not yield better results. But in general, yeah, you can tweak some things and you know make a project a bit cheaper if it does not compromise the quality, or you can improve the financing. Is previous job experience valuable, such as real estate broker? I was never a real estate broker, so you know, it can be or it may be not. It depends really, you know, for knowledge of the market, not necessarily. Um, do you think real estate tokenization would be interesting to develop within EY services? We were discussing that 2 years ago at the partners meeting in Athens, but I guess not yet. Would you yourself invest in real estate in Belgrade these days? Yes, but not because of great faith in the real estate market, but because I just had a baby and we're running out of space significantly. But jokes aside, yeah, I don't think it will get much cheaper. Does the rank of the university matter? Depends on the country. For me personally, if I were hiring you, no. In some other more competitive markets, maybe. I cannot say for sure. Is there a future for real estate development in Ukraine? Shout out to Ukraine. I believe yes. I've heard of a lot of plans for IFIs and other financing institutions to support development in Ukraine. So yeah, why not? I mean, I come from Bosnia again, and the country is redeveloped. So as much as you know things may seem gloomy, they improve eventually. So, and I'm talking, you know, for anything that may seem gloomy does not last forever. Trust me, everything changes. Uh, if there are no further questions, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Well, it was mostly experience, but if you identified this knowledge as well, thank you. I appreciate it. Uh, well, I won't be taking much more of your time. I guess you finished your coffees. I wish you all the best of luck in your future. I hope some of you will become our colleagues. And if you do, please give me a shout. I will be thrilled. Um, I really hope you have wonderful lives and take care. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Maya. It was amazing. Thank you so much for your session and for
You're
all of the
biased.
questions.
But thanks, guys. It was energizing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And all of you